All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is our first deadlift seminar, so thank you for being a part of it. I'm excited to bring you guys more of these. Hopefully this goes well, so give me the feedback. I'm Coach Quinn, for anybody who doesn't know me. And today we're just going to be going over how to do the deadlift, why it is an important lift for us to do, why it is not as dangerous as people may lead you to believe. And then any questions you guys have, please ask away. I'll try to leave some questions for the end, and we can do some interactive deadlift setups if anybody's down for that. All right, I can kind of take you through what we learn, and then you can actually practice it. I'll coach you through it. You guys can see how that all works. All right. So with the deadlift in general, why is it such an important lift? Because it is a functional movement pattern. There are 6 functional movement patterns. The deadlift is one of them. So hinging at the hips and picking things up off the floor, obviously super important to our life, our longevity, and this is a great way to train it. So that's why we want to make sure that we can do it. Also, with big compound lifts that we can lift pretty heavy, it's very efficient for us to train this way. We can get a lot done. We can work a lot of muscle groups, lift a lot of weight in a shorter amount of time. We all know that time is of the essence. We only have so much time in the gym. So getting good at the deadlift and being able to incorporate this into your program is a great way to strength train. Even if your goal is fat loss, being able to use that glycogen in this lift is going to be great for you as well. So building muscle, building strength, all those things. So that's why this is a great lift. A lot of people, there's a lot of fear that surrounds the deadlift, correct? Everybody's heard at some point deadlifts are bad for your back, this and that. There is no movement that is inherently dangerous. Absolutely not a single one. There is only movements that don't support your goal and doing things that you are not physically prepared for. So a lot of people think like, oh, if my form is bad, that's going to cause injury. Not necessarily. It could if you're not in the strongest position possible. But the main thing that we look at with causes of injury is doing something that you're not prepared for or that you're not recovered for. So recently I tore my bicep in February. It's because I did something that I was not recovered for. I had not taken the time to recover my body, and I put it through a stressor that I was not prepared for. So we'll go over kind of deadlifting with different positions, rounded spines, but I do not want you to fear this lift. What I want you to take from this is how to do the deadlift, building confidence with the deadlift, and then understanding how to progress it properly, because the body will adapt to a variety of different stimuluses. You'll see a variety of different deadlifts. You'll see people deadlift with rounded backs, and they'll be completely fine. I deadlifted 600 pounds with a rounded spine. I'm still here. I'm still talking to you guys today. So I just want you to build that confidence with the movement. And we'll go over a few different types of deadlifts and kind of go through all of that. So first thing I want to take you guys through is my setup process. So if you can set the deadlift up properly, it will put you in position to do the entire lift much, much better. Because we're starting from a dead stop, we're starting from the contracted position. That's the start of the lift. Like you think about a squat or a bench press, you're able to lower the weight, or you start in that eccentric. So it's easier to kind of build that tension. But here we have to build all of the tension before we start the movement. So that's where that setup process is going to come into play. So I think about this in a 5 or 6 step process, depending on how many numbers that we count. So we're going to start with the conventional deadlift. That's the one you're going to think of most often. Conventional just means my hands are outside my feet. Doesn't mean anything else. The sumo deadlift, feet outside my hands. So how wide and what that stance looks like will differ for everybody based on your mobility, your limb lengths, all of that stuff. But these are the foundational principles. So we're going to start hips width distance apart. That's the best place to start because we want our arms to be able to come straight down. If we have our feet out wider and our arms have to come out wider, that's going to increase the range of motion unnecessarily. So we're putting more stress on the body, going to be able to do less weight. So we'll start hips width distance apart. You're gonna cover your midfoot with the bar. I like to say cover your shoelaces. If you're like me and you don't have any shoelaces, you'll kind of learn how to gauge that. Maybe it's about an inch away from the bar. You're gonna hear me talk about the midfoot a ton. So where that arch of your foot is, that is your center of mass. So we need to keep the bar over our center of mass to be as strong as possible. So you're gonna hear me talk about that a lot. If you have any questions, let me know. So once we set our feet under that midfoot, this bar never moves from this position, okay? It does not roll forward and back. The bar never moves from this position. So we set up, then we are gonna hinge to the bar. We are not bending our knees forward. One of the biggest problems that I see is when people go down to get the bar, they go like this. What happened? I push the bar out in front of me, it's off my midfoot, I have zero leverage with the bar out here. So we're gonna hinge to the bar, keep our knees back, grab that bar right outside your legs, and then we bend the knees forward just until they touch the bar. So my shins, I'm trying to keep my shins as vertical as I can, keep my knees behind the bar. 2 reasons for that. 1, we're not pushing the bar forward. 2, my knees are out of the way. I have to pick this bar up past my knees. If I squat too far forward, the first thing that I have to do is pull my knees out of the way to start that movement. What happened? My hips shot up, my back rounds, I lose a little bit of that tension. So, let's see if I can keep this bar in one place. Hinge down. We grip the bar right outside of our legs. Arms are as straight down as we can get them. Bend those knees forward. Now we can generate that tension into the bar, pulling it back toward us, pushing our shoulders into our pockets. So the biggest thing I don't want to see happen here is try to pull the bar to you. You contract the shoulder blades. We're not able to row as much as we're able to deadlift. Your back is not as strong as your legs. So want to keep those arms long. Then when we have the knees here, we're over the bar. Armpits are still over the bar. So that's maintaining that center of mass, maintaining that leverage. If we sit back behind the bar, try and lift with our legs, my shoulders are back here. I don't have any leverage over the bar. So first thing that's gonna happen again is I'm gonna go here. So you set that up. Armpits over the bar. We get nice and tight, and then we can just drive straight through the floor and we're ready to go. Everything drives straight up through. The hips aren't shooting up first because we are in position and we're able to drive right through. All right. Any questions about that setup for the conventional deadlifts? We'll go through a little bit more of the... At the top? Yeah. So the lockout of the deadlift is knees locked, hips locked, shoulders back. That's if you want to, get 3 white lights in competition. I don't know if any of you guys are powerlifters here, but that's my standard for it. But I mean, as long as you get it up and you're good, then it's fine. For, general fitness, general strength, if we're not locking out all the way, I'm okay with it. We're getting the weight up. That's fine with me. So that's the conventional setup. For the sumo, feet are going to be out wider. Now, how wide? Again, depends on you, your mobility, your limb lengths. Brian here's got long ass arms. He can probably go out pretty wide and he'd be in pretty good position. But what we're going to do, so you can start with, where I like to start is I'll sit down like this, and wherever I can stack my shins vertically here, knees over the ankles, that's about where I'll start. If you just need like a little bit more, maybe your back's bothering you a little bit, you can go a modified sumo stance, so that's like shoulder width apart. That'll be right here. So we'll still get basically that movement. We don't have to get out quite as wide if our hips can't do that. But we'll start there, same thing. Midfoot under the bar, shins about an inch away or so. And then again, we're still gonna hinge. Our feet are gonna be pointed out on this one because with our feet out wide, if I try to put my toes forward, I'm gonna come here. I don't have power here with my knee inside of my foot, or if I try to point them out, look what happens to my feet. I can't press through my foot. So when I have them out, about a 45. But again, you can play with this as to what exactly works for you. We'll hinge down, grab the bar, arms straight down again, because the wider we go, longer the range of motion for no reason. If we go in too tight, it's just not going to be able to get that tension. So arms straight down. Then we'll bend the knees till the shins touch. Again, make sure they're still not coming out in front. Want the shins to touch, our hips are still back. And then the biggest difference with this one is from this position, we want to get our hips under us just a little bit and get a more upright torso. So that's the benefit of sumo, is it takes a little bit of that stress off your back, puts more into your legs, because you're able to get a little bit more upright. So we're here, knees are still back out of the way, but we roll the hips under us a little bit. I push into the floor, push my arms long, but notice I'm still staying in front of the bar. I'm also not getting behind. You might be able to do it when it's lighter, but as it gets heavier, we need to maintain that center of mass. Sorry, I get gassed trying to talk and do this at the same time. All right, so we set up. Again, pull the hips under us a little bit, keep those armpits over the bar, pull that slack out, and then we're ready to drive straight through on this one as well. So the main thing I want you to take away from that setup process is you don't want to get behind the bar. We don't want to squat our deadlifts. Those are the two biggest things. So squatting your deadlift, again, pushing the knees forward, sitting your hips all the way down, trying to lift with your legs. It is a leg lift, but the back is also doing a good amount of work. We actually want to stay over top of the bar. We don't want to get behind it. So those are the biggest issues that I typically see, is rolling the bar out in front of you, not having leverage, sitting too far back, again, losing leverage, and then just not generating enough tension at the start. Oh man. All right. So as far as the execution of the lift, so let's go over what that looks like in practice once we get set up. So you've gone through that whole setup process, feet underneath the bar, midfoot, hinge back, grab that bar straight down, bend the knees until they touch, find that hip position that works for you. Again, some people are going to be a little lower. You probably want to keep your hips above your knees though. It is, at the end of the day, a hinge movement, so we want to keep that there. Now, one of the biggest things is, again, that slack. Hear that jiggle in the bar. We want to pull that out. But again, we don't want to pull with our shoulder blades. We actually want to keep our arms really long, pull our shoulders down and back to engage the lats, pull your ears away from your shoulders, and then I push into the floor to pull that jiggle out. Notice I can pick this bar up because it's light without even really doing anything. That's just me pulling the slack out of the bar. So you're pushing into the floor to pull that slack, and then we can brace the core from here and then drive straight through the floor. Notice I stay over top of the bar. I'm not getting behind it, because what's going to happen here, my hips, my glutes are contracted fully, and I have nothing to drive through with. So I'm just going to be doing one of those. So staying over top of the bar, driving straight through the floor, set up, push that slack, push the world away, stay over the bar, notice my hips stay back, then I can drive straight through and finish it out. Same thing with the sumo. If you're here, sumo is going to be harder off the floor because of the position that our legs are in, but once we get it up, we're able to stay more upright. Our hips are much closer to the bar, so it's much easier to finish that lift. Doesn't put quite as much stress on the back. That's why they call it cheating. But, all right. Any questions about any of that so far? Anything we've gone over? Okay, cool. So let's go over, I want to go over deadlifting with a rounded spine just a little bit so you guys can see when it could be a problem and when it might not be. So if I am rounding to the point where I'm losing tension in my back, my hips are getting underneath of me, or I cannot keep my core braced, that's going to be a problem, all right? So if you ever see yourself deadlift and you get here, notice where my glutes are. You guys can see. They're fully contracted at this point. I need to keep them back so that I can finish through. If I fully contract, I have nowhere for them to go. Now my back is doing absolutely all of this work. Putting that much stress on the spine, especially again, if you're not prepared for it, you have not trained those positions, that could be an issue. Notice also what happens to my back. My shoulders roll forward. I'm losing tension in my lats. I can't hold that either. Or I'm just fully caving in, not bracing my core. So those are the biggest issues there with spinal rounding. Again, if you can get a little bit, but I can maintain tension, this is probably about what my normal deadlift looks like, and then I finish through. But I'm able to keep the hips in good position because I'm able to drive through the floor with my quads with enough power. And being able to stay over the bar, stay tight, is really, really helpful for that. So if you need to train any of those things, so you're struggling with rounding your back because you can't stay tight, one of the best things to do is something called a pen lay row or a barbell bent over row. So you're here, you set up just like any other deadlift. I get all that tension, and then I'm just gonna row this bar up and back down. So I have to keep the core tight, I have to keep my hips in position, and I'm strengthening my back, squeezing my lats in this position. You can also, again, do a bent over row. That'll help you there as well. Also, if you're struggling off the floor, quads could be an issue. We need to be able to drive straight through with our quads to start the movement. So doing leg presses in your deadlift stance is something I like to do a lot. Hack squats, just strengthening those quads up, but doing it in a tight stance so you can get used to driving through just like that. And last part of that is making sure that you have foot pressure throughout your entire foot. I think a lot of people talk about sitting back and getting onto their heels to pull back and up. We want to drive our whole foot through the floor. So make sure those toes are punched down. We stay over the bar, and then you can really drive through nice and strong there as well. So good. All right, any questions about any of that? I know I went kind of fast. Did I talk loud enough? We all good? Okay. So, I mean, those are the biggest things with the deadlift. And then thinking about these concepts when we use other implements as well, like a kettlebell or the trap bar, which is the bar that you step into with the handles on the sides. Thinking about making it a hip hinge movement. Because with the trap bar or the kettlebell, you have a lot more freedom with your knees. So it's easier to, squat down. But if we want it to translate to our actual deadlift and use the barbell, we want to make those lifts look just like that. So think about that same setup process. Kettlebell in between your feet, hinge down. We grab it here. We don't bend the knees too far forward. We keep them behind our arms so that we can stay over that bar, learn the movement, learn the tension, learn how to pick heavy things up off the floor. So any of those are great. The reason that I love the barbell so much, and I'll just point this out because I think the barbell gets a bad rap. It's an intimidating piece of equipment for the deadlift, things like that. But it really is, again, in about how you load it. Like, the barbell weighs 45 pounds. Everyone in this room can pick up 45 pounds, correct? I would assume. So you can start with that. We can put 10-pound plates on here. Again, make sure you're using bumper plates so that the bar is up a little bit higher. If you're using the little plates, you're going to have to squat all the way down here to pick it up. It's going to put you in a harder position. But the barbell is great because it's self-correcting. Like I said, if you get that barbell out in front of you, it's going to be a lot harder to pick this up because I've moved that bar farther away from my hips. This is the point, our moment arm, we'll call it. So the moment arm is the distance between your hips and this bar. Farther it gets away, the harder that lift gets. So if we can keep it as tight as we can, That's why, again, the sumo deadlift, we shorten that moment arm from our hips so it's easier for us to drive through. But the barbell is self-correcting in that way. So if you feel that bar drift away from you, it's going to get much more difficult. It's going to tell you, it's going to give you that feedback that we're doing it incorrectly. Also, if you're not staying over the bar, if you're getting too far behind it, you're not going to be able to pick it up from here. You're going to go here. The reason your hips shoot up when we sit back too far is because you're trying to gain that leverage over the bar. You have to get back over it, which now leaks energy, leaks strength, and we lose tension here because we've gained it all, and now we pull forward and it's hard to maintain that tension in our back as we drive up. So the barbell is self-correcting. It's also the most progressible. We can load how much weight? There's only, so heavy of a kettlebell that we can pick up. I can load basically endless amounts of weights onto this barbell, especially for the purposes of gaining general strength, gaining better function. The barbell is great for that. We just want to make sure that we're being very smart about those progressions. 5 pounds at a time, 10 pounds if you feel pretty good about it. You can even use 2.5 pound plates, like best plates in the gym. Add those on there. So just being very smart about those progressions and going from there. All right. So, covered the setup, covered the execution. Does anyone want to be the first person to come up and do some demo? All right. So, whichever one works for you. If you want a sumo, you want a conventional, I don't care, but let's go through that setup process. Over your shoelaces, I'd probably step in half a step more. Yep. Set about inch away. Yep. Then you're going to hinge those hips back first. Keep those knees out of the way. Grip the bar. Shoulders down and back. Good. Notice here. Notice how far that bar is away from his shins as he picks that up. So we want to get that tension back a little bit more. So sit your hips back harder. Yep. Now, from here, shoulders down and back just a little bit. There you go. Push into the floor. Pull that length long. There we go. Better. Good. There you go. And then as soon as it crosses your knees, we want to stay over the bar just a little bit more. There you go. Now drive through. As soon as it crosses those knees, drive those hips through. Good. Nice job. Very good. All right, you're good there. Nice work. So you see how we make little easy corrections just like that. Staying over top of the bar, generating enough tension. Obviously, as the weight gets heavier, that becomes even more important. Every of those little steps, you're going to feel it a lot more. We can get away with some. Thomas is a pretty strong guy, so 95 pounds. Not going to be too terribly bad for him, but we want to get that form correct. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Let's do it. Bring those Crocs up here. All right, so I would cover the logo of this Croc with it. So hips are back. We're staying over top of the bar. Good. One thing I want to point out here, head position. It's something I didn't cover. So notice that she's putting her head up. What happens to the spine when we do that? It curves this way. This is not a strong position for our spine. We want to keep it in that neutral position or even get into flexion. So I like to pick a spot out in front of me a couple of feet to keep that head in a neutral position, and then we can generate that tension, drive hit through. Good. So now I would say pull a little bit more slack. I noticed the bar jiggle as soon as you pulled off the floor. There you go. So drive into the floor a little bit, head down just a touch. Yep, pull, there you go. Good. Much better. Nice. Love it. All right. Does anybody want to try a sumo deadlift? Yeah. This is even better. So me and Kyle have only conventional deadlifted, so.
First time. No judgment, right?
Yes.
So, like this wide?
I would say so. And then turn your feet out. Yeah. So still make sure you're getting nice and tight to the bar. Good. So now hips back. Grab that bar straight down. And then you're going to bend your knees out in line with your toes. So push them out. Yep. Now, from here, we're just going to drop those hips a little bit underneath of you. So pull your hips to the bar. Good. There you go. Yep. Just like that. Generate that tension. Drive straight through. Good. So now we just want to make sure that we're keeping it tight. Get it right up to the knees. And then drive the hips straight through. Good. There it is. That looked good. Might have to start working these in. Let's do one more. Just to get a good feel. So make sure, again, as we get fatigued, keep generating that tension each and every rep. Good. Drive straight through. Nice job. All right. Good work there. So that's another thing that, depending on your goals and how we perform our deadlift sets, do you want to reset at the bottom of every single lift? If your goal is maximum strength, we want to practice that one repetition max over and over and over again. So set up, do the deadlift, we come down, and then reset each time so that every single rep is starting with that tension position. If we're just kind of learning the movement, we want to do a little bit more volume. A couple things that can be good is lowering down slow. So this can kind of help you feel into that movement. A lot of times I'll see people's second rep looks a lot better than their first because they've generated all of that tension already and they come down in the correct position. So if you're trying to learn what the correct starting position is for you, this can be a great way to do it as well. So we set up, do all of our steps, come up, and then we're going to come down the same way. Hips back first. As soon as we cross our knees, we can drop them down. But with that bar up, I have all this tension still, and then I can drive right back through. Notice where my hips come to. They're up here. This should probably be about the starting position for my hips on every single rep. So there. And then going nice and slow can help you feel where that tension is on the bar, where you're at in relation to the bar. Are you letting the bar get out in front of you? Are you getting used to keeping that bar over that midfoot, keeping your armpits over the bar, staying over top, being able to drive through? We do that same thing on the way down, and then we can kind of touch and go once we learn how to generate this tension. But if the hardest part for you is generating tension at the start, drop that bar down, reset every single rep. So you'll see me when I deadlift, I'll pick up and then I'll just let the bar fall. That's why we use the deadlift platform. That's why we use the bumper plates. We can let that bar hit the ground a little bit. We don't want to, I'm not throwing it to the ground, but I'm letting gravity do its job. Then I reset every single rep and go again. So I'm practicing that setup for that one rep max every single time. But if you need to learn that tension, slower eccentrics, things like that can be really good. And go from there. All right. Last thing I want to go over is just the hip hinge movement in general. How to practice that, how to get better at it. So we do a lot of RDLs in coaching here. So those of you that have been in know this movement, but this is one of the harder movements to get right as well because it is strictly a hip hinge movement. We're going to take the quads completely out of it. So an RDL or a Romanian deadlift starts from the top. So same starting position, feet hips width distance apart, arms right outside. And then from here, we're going to slight bend in those knees. And then we're going to hinge the hips back till our torso is parallel to the floor. We get below our knees, and then we come right back up. If you can get more range of motion, great. But this is enough right here. We're stretching out the hamstrings. We're stretching out the glutes. We're strengthening the low back, the back in general. So I think about this more as a back and forth movement. So I'm shooting my hips back, trying to touch this wall behind me, keeping that tension on the bar, and then driving straight back through. Biggest problems I see with this one are either getting too much of a deadlift into it we don't get our hips back far enough when we just reach for the floor. That's the biggest problem that happens. We're not reaching for the floor. You actually want to fight this weight from coming to the floor, hinging those hips back, stretch it out, and then drive through. So I think about it back and forth. And again, keeping those armpits over the bar. I'm not getting out in front of it or staying too far behind it, getting that out in front of me. Keep it right there, right over that midfoot, and drive straight back through. The other one is the same thing. It's called a stiff leg deadlift, but it is just from, so it's basically an RDL, but we're starting it from the floor. So you get set up. Keep those knees back much further this time. So the hips are just back, legs are much straighter, and then all the work is going to be done with that posterior chain, the glutes, the hamstrings. This is great for strengthening your positioning off the floor, getting tension, strengthening the back, and strengthening the hamstrings to finish that lift through. So again, if you're struggling with that tension, this might be a great one. If you're struggling staying over the bar, stiff leg deadlifts are a great way to do it as well. All right. Yeah.
What should fatigue feel like? Where should we feel it?
Where?
Yeah, which are the quads, hamstrings, glutes, back, generally where?
Everywhere. Like, yeah. This is one of the funniest questions that I get is, where should I feel this when people do deadlifts? And I'm like, everywhere. Because really your whole body is doing the work. The majority of the work is being done with the posterior chain, so it'll be normal to feel it in your low back, especially if you're deconditioned. That's okay. We need to figure out the difference between muscle fatigue, because there are muscles back here. It's not just your spine. And what would be considered like an injury, like popping, anything like that. But you'll likely feel it in your back, some in your glutes. You probably won't feel it much in your quads because it's a small part of the movement and it's just the contraction. So most of the muscle damage is done in eccentric phases, so the stretching out of the muscle. So you probably won't feel much in your quads, but you'll know if they're not doing their job because you won't be able to get it up off the floor. But I would say mostly low back, glutes, maybe some hamstrings based on the way that you deadlift. If you're sumo deadlifting, I would expect you to feel it mostly in your quads and your glutes if you're doing it correctly. If you're feeling sumo deadlifts in your low back, again, if you're deconditioned, there is some stress on there, but it should take a lot of it off. We should feel it much more in our legs if we're doing it correctly. Good question, though.
Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of doing a deadlift as opposed to the Romanian deadlift and like the applications of that? Like, why would I train with that?
Okay, yeah. So what is the point of doing a conventional deadlift versus like the RDL or the Romanian deadlift? So the conventional deadlift is that full body movement pattern. We're going to be able to load that heavier. That is going to, and loading it heavier is going to allow us to build more strength, most likely, in that movement. And that's kind of, they're both functional. All strength training is functional. So when I use the word functional, don't get that twisted. But yeah, the actual deadlift itself, the conventional deadlift or the sumo, you're using the whole body, using those quads. The Romanian deadlift, I like to use more for, again, posterior development. I like to use that more for hypertrophy as well because it has that eccentric component to it. So the stretching of the muscle creates tension that is hypertrophic or muscle building. That is a good stimulus for that. You don't get quite as much of that with the actual deadlift because, like we talked about, if you're not going super slow in that eccentric, not even super slow, but if you're not really controlling it, you're not getting a ton of stretch in a lot of the muscles. It's more of a contracting of the muscles that does the movement. So RDL's really good for that. And again, if you need to strengthen the hamstrings because your deadlift, like me, gets stuck right here all the time because your hamstrings can't finish through, the RDL and the stiff leg deadlift are going to be really good for that as well. Another great question. Thank you. What's up, Brian?
What are your thoughts on grip? Do you change your grip based on sumo versus conventional? Like greater resistance, suffocated?
Yeah. That's good. I wanted to talk about this. Thank you. So the question was about grip and how you should grip the bar, and if you should change your grip based on which style of deadlift you're doing. So there's 3 grips that we can use for the deadlift. The first one is just an overhand grip. So you're going to grip the bar, overhand, thumb outside of your fingers. So the thumb is on the outside of the bar, just like this. And I want to preface one thing with saying with grip on the deadlift is you always want to grip the bar in your fingers, okay? We don't want to try and grip the bar in our palm, because what causes this bar to fall out of our hands is that it rolls, okay? So if we try to grip the bar in our palms, first thing that's going to happen when it gets heavy is it's going to start to roll, and once that thing gets going, we're shit out of luck. You're not going to be able to hold that much weight. So we grip it in our fingers to try and keep it from rolling. So then that's the second grip, is the mixed grip. So that is one overhand, one underhand. The benefit of this is that the bar rolls in opposite way in each hand. So it's rolling forward from this hand and backward from this hand. So if I grip it both ways, I stop that bar from rolling. This is the most effective grip method, but biggest thing here, just keeping the arms long. Again, grip it in your fingers. Make sure you get that tension, get the arms long, and then pull straight through. Now, you can switch the grip. I don't think it makes too much of a difference going overhand, underhand for like imbalances in your back. Like you might hear some of that. I don't think it's a huge issue, but if you find it to be one, just switch it. Switch it each set. Switch it in different sessions. If you find that one is more comfortable than the other, use that for your heaviest work. Use the other grip for your other work. And you can mix grip with sumo or conventional. I like it better for conventional. The one I like for sumo is going to be what's called a hook grip. So this, we're going to wrap our thumbs around the bar, and then we're going to put these 2 fingers on top of our thumb. Now this is a lot more difficult for people with small hands. This is the reason that I don't do this grip, is that my hands are a little bit small, but that hook allows you to keep it in there. And again, you don't want to get all the way in here so that my hands are short. I want to grip it in the finger and then grip this in my fingers, because especially on the sumo, this actually allows me to get a little bit more length. Notice how long my fingers are. Now we're talking centimeters, and I mean, when you're deadlifting 600-700 pounds, centimeters might make a difference, but that can be beneficial for that. Also, it's easier on this one, I feel like, to keep your back tight because we're sitting a little bit more upright. When we do the conventional, I find the hook grip a little bit more difficult to keep my back in a strong position. So that's why I like to go mixed for conventional. If I could do hook, I would, but especially with the bicep injury, there's some theory out there that a supinated grip makes you more susceptible to like a bicep injury from deadlifting, but I deadlifted 600 pounds before I did this, so I don't want you guys to fear that in any way, as long as you keep your arms long. So I think about really just locking my triceps out, keeping my arms as long as possible. As long as I don't bend these arms, we should be fine, especially if we're progressing up properly, building up that tolerance. But yeah, did I answer your question? Cool. Any other questions about grip or anything like that? Anything specific to like your lift or anything like that? Go ahead.
What can be done to help with like tendonitis during the deadlift? If you're caught with tendonitis,
In like your wrist?
right through your tendonitis goes through your arm, forearm, right to the arm.
So anytime with tendonitis, what we want to do is think about how to reduce the stimulus to then be able to progress it. So like I've never had tendonitis there, but I would pull back the load on deadlifts to something that you know you can handle. And then if it's in your thumb, make sure you're gripping in your fingers so that we're not putting too much tension there. And then when we're doing our deadlifts, maybe we use a little bit of tempo, or you hold at the top just to kind of train that with a weight that's comfortable. Again, building up that tolerance, and then other forearm, thumb strengthening exercises, wrist strengthening exercises to kind of build that back up. Maybe doing some stability work to kind of just strengthen that tendon. With tendons in general, they respond really well to slow tempos and isolation work, or isometric work, sorry. So that really strengthens tendons. So a lot of gripping of things, building that tolerance up, and then finding some stability, ways to kind of slowly stretch that muscle out and then contract, I think will help you a lot. Yeah, that would be kind of my go-to, and that's anytime I'm dealing with any of that. I have tendonitis in my knee, I have tendonitis in this elbow, so I work through these things on a regular basis of just pulling it back, slowing things down, using some isometrics to stretch that out, and then thinking about, how we can change the load on this, even if it's, switching to kettlebells for a little bit or switching to trap bar because that positioning feels better. That can help you kind of build that tolerance back up. Yeah.
Talk about like straps and hooks and belts. Why do we use them? When do we use them? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the question was about like lifting equipment, like belts, wrist wraps, stuff like that. When to use them, when we don't, or when we shouldn't. So the only time I recommend using straps for deadlifts is if we have built our grip strength up to where it is not an issue for what we want to be able to do. So for your general strength, if you want to be able to deadlift, say, 1.5, 2 times your body weight, that's your goal. If you can do that, then we can use straps in some of our higher volume work to make sure that we're getting good work and the bar is not slipping out of our hands. Especially in the gym, if you're using one of the older bars or one of these bars that rolls like crazy, like maybe you need to use straps on a given day because your grip is just not there. But I'd recommend it more for higher volume work or later into your workout when your grip is a little bit fatigued, but you still want to get good work out of it. But just making sure that our grip strength is at a certain level so that we can do what we want to be able to do. And then as far as a belt, I love a lifting belt for any number of reasons. The belt is great for teaching you how to brace your core. Brian, can I see your belt? Thank you. So basically the goal of the belt is for us to be able to create intra-abdominal pressure. So you want to think of I think of my torso as kind of like a soda can that's not opened. So you know how you feel that squeeze, that pressure? As soon as you crack it open, no pressure anymore. So you want to be able to create that all the way around. So that's what the belt allows us to do, is suck in, and then we breathe out into that belt. That's my core brace. So if you practice that, just sitting there, breathe in through a straw, and then blow it out into your stomach. So bracing your core has nothing to do with sucking in or flexing your abs. It is actually pushing out, creating pressure all the way around. And the belt is a great teacher for that. So put the belt on, and now I brace, and I can pick up and keep that core much tighter. So the only thing I don't like to see is if you don't yet know how to brace your core, I wouldn't recommend using the belt. The belt can be a great aid to cue you to do it under heavier loads when it's much more difficult. And it can be great to learn. But I see a lot of people say like, my back hurts today. I'm going to throw the belt on and get it as tight as I possibly can. And now I can't breathe and I can't brace. And I'm still going to do the same thing. It is not preventative of injury by any means. It is a tool to help you brace your core, and it can help you learn how to do it better. But I don't want you to rely on it for, say, I won't get hurt if I wear the belt, or anything like that. And then, thank you, sir. One other thing is how we brace in our deadlift. I missed this part. So there's two ways to do it. You can brace at the top, because sometimes it can be hard to brace in that bent over position. So you can go, I can get that nice tight brace and then hold it through my setup. Or if that doesn't quite work for you, which I don't really love that, you can hinge down, and then right before, as I generate that tension, let's see what happens to my stomach here. I blow it up, and then I can drive through. And the other thing with wearing a belt on deadlifts is I like to try and wear it a little bit higher than I would on like squats. Because I'm hinging over, it can be uncomfortable to wear that belt down by your hips. It rolls over, you get tucked in, pinched. So putting it up a little bit higher and bracing up into here can actually help you a little bit more. So if you're using a belt for deadlifts, try it up a little bit higher if you can, and just see how that feels. Might feel better. Good question. Anybody else? Anybody else want to deadlift? Anybody else want to go over anything else? Good? All right.
I try to keep a few things in mind.
Yeah.
And I can't remember too many things
Cool.
at one time. So
No, you're good. So I'll take you through kind of the setup process that we went through. Are you going to conventional or sumo? Okay. So hips width distance apart with your feet. Somewhere around there. Cover those shoelaces with the bar. Then we're going to hinge our hips down. So keep your knees back.
I was going to tell you what I go through and then.
All right.
So I look, like you said, I look
Yep.
about 4 feet in front of me. I stick my butt out, and then I try to lift my hips and my shoulders at the same time.
Yep.
The ball is going against my legs,
Yep.
and then I stand up.
Yep. That looks pretty good. One thing I would say is we're pushing the knees forward a little bit too far. So I would say bring your feet in just a touch.
In more? Okay.
Yeah, just in tight. No, in this way. Yep. Stance in. Now step back just a touch from the bar. All right. Now we're going to push those hips back. Keep the knees where they're at. Go grab the bar. There we go. Now pull those shoulders down and back. We want those armpits over the bar. And then drive straight through. There you go. Good. So then make sure we're not sitting those knees too far forward at the end. There you go. Trying to keep them back out of the way as much as we can. So I think, yep, better.
Lose some skin on them.
Yeah. So if we keep the knees back, we don't have to get them out of the way. And that allows us to get a little bit more, be able to drive through a little bit easier and not have that hip shoot and have us go this way instead of straight up and down. Yep. Good work. Yeah. Awesome. Anything else? You want to try? Let's do it. So closer to the bar to start. So stand up again. So get in there, cover those shoelaces. Yep. Nice. So now don't let the bar push away from you as you pull up. Come all the way down to the floor and then drive straight through the floor, straight up. There you go. So then on the way down, hinge those hips back till it gets past your knees, then bend. Yep. Get back into that position. Good. So for you, I'd just say keeping that bar a little bit tighter to you. Yeah. Let me see something here. Try a sumo stance. So here, yep, see how far away the bar is from you? Yeah. So stand up again. Spread your feet out a little bit more. There you go. Get a little tighter. Good. Now sit those hips back, grab the bar. Make sure your knees are pushing outside your arms. Arms are straight down.